of power for actions taken when they served in an earlier PIS-led government. Kaminski says the case against him is politically motivated. And finally, Europe's longest reigning monarch, Queen Margrethe of Denmark, is abdicating this weekend. She steps down on January the 14th after 52 years on the throne. The 83-year-old monarch is handing over the crown to her oldest son, Crown Prince Frederik, in the first such resignation in Europe's oldest ruling monarchy in nearly 900 years. The Queen announced on live TV during her traditional New Year's Eve speech that she intended to abdicate, taking many in the country of nearly 6 million people by surprise. She's often designed costumes and scenography for theatre plays and ballets interpreting the fairy tales of famous Danish author Christian Andersen.
Helen Feeney with that roundup of European news. This is Inside Europe, and I'm Kate Laycock in Germany, recording from home in Düsseldorf today, and there is a reason for that. Germany's train drivers' union is engaged in a multi-day strike action, and the roads aren't a safe bet either, since convoys of tractors manned by angry farmers protesting cuts to fuel subsidies keep popping up and blocking the traffic. All in all, there's a feeling of malaise, frustration, and quite literal gridlock. Time, I thought, to check back in with DW's political correspondent Thomas Barrow in Berlin.
Okay, and my commute also has become a little bit more difficult, not only because of this 3-day nationwide strike by train drivers, but also because of the ongoing protest by farmers across the country that are basically upset by planned subsidy cuts that the government has announced. Specifically talking about this 3-day nationwide strike, it is not the first of its kind, but it's part of a larger dispute over wages and conditions. And there's one statistic that actually very clearly describes the situation, because apparently 80% of long-distance train services will be cancelled, and that basically means that people across the country, also here in Berlin, are basically forced to make changes to their timetables and to their plans if they want to get to their destinations.
And as you mentioned, the roads are not a safe bet at the moment either, and that is because all across the country, convoys of farmers have been blocking roads with their tractors. Now, I'd like Thomas to go into more detail about the exact nature and tone of these protests in a minute, but first perhaps you could just set out for me what the issue is here for the farmers.
Basically, what led to these protests now has to do with these subsidies that the government had originally announced they would cut. But in the end, some of them were backtracked by the government understanding that they somehow had to also work with the farmers together. But in the end, for many in the farmers' union and many farmers, they do not think that's enough, and they still think that their situation is so difficult that they basically have to go to the streets with their tractors to protest. Now, the government understands that these protests are legitimate, that people have the right to do so. Where there's a little bit of controversy, or in fact a lot of controversy actually, in the nature of some of the protests, because there's a concern among German authorities that some of the protests could be hijacked by